Frequency Podcast Network. Stories that matter, podcasts that resonate.
Sean Diddy Combs remains behind bars, awaiting sentencing after being found guilty this week on 2 of 5 charges against him. And while he was acquitted of the most serious charges, racketeering conspiracy and sex trafficking, he is still facing up to 20 years in prison. The judge also opted to deny bail, citing Combs' history of violence and past illegal conduct. And his legal woes aren't over yet. So it remains to be seen where this once very popular music mogul will go from here. I'm Kris McCusker, and in this episode of The Big Story, we speak to one of the directors of the docuseries The Fall of Diddy, which is streaming on HBO Max. Yoruba Richen, thank you so much for doing this today.
Absolutely.
I want to go back a little bit before I ask for your take on the verdicts. You co-directed this docuseries. Tell us about that, because I'm interested in the timeline in particular. I assume that you had started working on this before Sean Combs was arrested, correct?
Yes, absolutely. The production team started working on this actually before Cassie's lawsuit was filed. And Maxine, which is the company that produced it, and ID started working on it then, and had gotten some inklings and information that things were percolating around Combs' dealings and things were starting to be looked into. And then I was brought on as a co-director with Emma Schwartz, the other director, in February of 2024. And we made the series, me and the team made the series, and it aired in January of 2025. So we were following all the developments, obviously, of from the raid to the video being released of him assaulting Cassie to the, to the arrest. And it was the way we were able to do this is because we had an incredible production team from our, producers and our execs at ID and our editors, all rushing, all working to make it happen and to get it on air. And while also following and incorporating these developments that were happening. And of course, in the series, we actually take a deep dive into Combs and to Bad Boy as well. So it was both looking back in terms of, understanding how he became the powerhouse that he became and how these allegations of violence and brutality have followed him, from very early days to what was happening now. And we incorporate, all of that in the series.
So I feel like probably from, the start of the making of this series to the time it actually aired, that maybe the goal changed and maybe a working title changed as well, just because there were so many developments, like you were almost working in real time.
Yeah, we were working in real time. I mean, the goal didn't necessarily change. What shifted was the developments that happened. So, we were filming an interview when the CNN released the Cassie tape, for example. So that obviously became a big part of, a turning point in terms of our series. The raid happened, the arrest. So all those events happened as we were making the film. Obviously we were done with the series by the time the trial started, but we wanted to, because we were also looking to see who this person was and how he got to where he got and what his impact was, why it was so important, this story, his impact on the culture, and what had led us up to this point. So that goal never changed. It was the events that happened that we incorporated into the story.
All right. So, with that as sort of your background, what are your thoughts on the verdicts? I mean, there's a lot of talk out there about how this played out. What is your take?
I mean, I am, not a legal analyst. So I think that we heard what it was over 28 days, a lot of revelations and information about, obviously from the two main women who testified against him, Cassie and Jane, pseudonym Jane. We heard from, various other people who work for him. The prosecutor had the prosecutors were trying to prove those charges, and he had the best lawyers that money could buy to refute it. And so I think that what we're seeing in terms of what we're seeing in terms of the community, the larger community is, and also too from some of our participants, is shock. Some are shocked, some are resigned, and then there is also a fear. There was definitely the fear of him, if he were to be released on bond, which his lawyers were asking for, because of his violence. And in fact, his violent behavior. And in fact, in denying that bond, the judge said, your own, to the defense, you admitted to him being violent. So thus he was not released on bond. But for example, one of our participants, Jordan, his chef, who worked for him as a chef, she wrote after the verdicts came out, she wrote a post on Instagram basically pleading with the judge not to let him out on bond because of the violent behavior she, allegedly experienced with him. So that is something our participants are definitely concerned with.
You underline a very important point. It's been said many times now that none of this trial would not have happened were it not for Cassie Ventura coming forward, and the bravery coming from her, along with other people who came forward. They went through this, and Cassie Ventura was on the stand for what, 2 or 3 days?
It might even been longer, but
and pregnant.
pregnant.
I can see where there would be a degree of disappointment, I guess, to put it mildly.
Yeah. I would imagine so. And the lawyer said that in an interview with CNN. But he also said that Cassie was, proud basically of the fact that she did come forward and that it unlocked other people coming forward. And we found that too in the series, that after her, with each step that happened, more people were willing to talk and wanting to come and tell their stories that had been hidden, that they had not told for so long. So with each development, we found that in our own work in making this, that it unlocked people willing to come forward. I think there's safety in numbers. I think people wanted to be part of the process of accountability. I think that's, we found that was the case for sure.
Did you find in making this series like a degree of fear? I know you spoke to people who did end up testifying in this trial.
A degree of fear from our participants? Is that what you're asking?
Yes. Were they afraid to talk to you?
Yeah, I think there was fear and hesitation. As I said, I think with each development that happened, the release of the video, the raid, the arrest, there was a safety in numbers, and people were motivated to come forward. But I think fear, there's documented accounts of retaliatory behavior that Combs has had. So yes, there was fear, which is why Cassie, when she released the lawsuit, when she settled the lawsuit, that was sort of the beginning of the of the process of people coming forward. I think there's something now like 70 civil lawsuits against him. And I doubt that would have happened if it hadn't been Cassie coming forward.
Yeah, so even with the conclusion of this trial, there's still the sentencing, I guess, to come, and there's a bit of a question mark on how that plays out. But his legal problems are still not over, with these civil cases still pending.
Yeah, that has to be dealt with.
Okay, so given again, this is sort of the landscape that we're looking at. I mean, you sort of spoke a little to his power and his influence. Does that change?
Well, we will see. I mean, I would only imagine that it will, in terms of, what we saw can't be unseen, at the very least, in terms of that video. That is out there. The testimony is out there. Very, very vivid testimony. That can't be taken away. But there are people who continually supported him, and from the beginning, and never stopped. So, and who there are people outside the courtroom who were cheering and support, are on his, believed him to be innocent. So there certainly will be that faction. But I think, we have seen people make, in all kinds of parts of our culture, in politics, in sports, in entertainment, try to make a comeback, and or try to, redeem themselves potentially, or, reposition themselves as a player. So only time will tell.
Well, and he's undergone a number of name changes. I guess that was, part of his reinvention over the years.
Definitely. Definitely.
And please remind us just how powerful he was.
One of the things that we really did in the series, and that I think it's important to understand the whole story, is his, to understand how influential and powerful he was in music, where he started, and why, the careers of many people are owed to him, and how he changed hip hop by making it mainstream. And it's something that we sort of take for granted now. But we have to remember, when he got started in the early 90s, it was barely 10 years ago that MTV was not, as a policy, not playing Black music. Hip hop was considered, something, a fad, something from the ghetto. He brought that into the mainstream. So through through Bad Boy, and through creating not just Bad Boy, but then the whole, becoming a mogul. And so he, then ventured into these other areas: fashion, lifestyle, then of course later on becoming a reality TV guy, very early on in the reality TV phase of our entertainment, and one of the few Black billionaires. So I think it is important to understand, and we show this in the series, where he came from and how he got there, and the influence that he had. But also, too, as we show in the series, that he had from the very beginning, there were allegations of violence and brutality. And we have people coming forward who talk about that from the very beginning, and again up until recent events. So I think, to get a real, it's important to understand the whole story, and also too, for African Americans specifically, but all lovers of hip hop, that this is, this is not a easy story, in terms of this was somebody that, many, 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 many people looked up to and wanted to emulate his success. And so that's also why it's been difficult, I think, and hard for some of the people to step forward, or to even admit what their experience was.
Well, and there are, sort of stories out there of, people who came forward and talked a little about their difficult relationship with Combs, but then they were seen in public with him and everything appeared to be okay. So I guess
Yeah.
that sort of spoke to the power that was going on in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that with Cassie, all through their relationship.
I'm curious. You've put this series together. Might there be a part two?
There's always a possibility for continuing this story. We have to see what's happening next, but we're certainly following the developments.
Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. Again, I really feel like you have a very unique perspective. It's almost like you're psychic. You knew something was coming and
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me on.
Yoruba Richen is the co-director of the docuseries The Fall of Diddy, which is streaming on HBO Max. That wraps up this episode of The Big Story. You can send us feedback on this episode or any other by emailing us at hello@thebigstorypodcast.ca. I'm Kris McCusker. Thanks for listening.